Hey guys, hope everyone's doing well. Not to worry, this will not, this will not be any long, laborious reading, but something that popped up in her records. It's a motion that's been filed. But what's interesting is, and I got to turn my head sideways. And if I take a little bit longer to read sometimes, I am like visually challenged and I have to really really like look at it and anyhow, but it comes from a Raymond and Crystal Bryson from Bakersfield, California. It is addressed to Tiffany Moore Russell. And it looks like whoever those people are, it came from them. And it says it was filed in office to the judge yesterday, August 27th. But motion to dismiss case charges. Sarah Boone, restraints placed on February 25th, 2020. Arrest booking once in jeopardy on 4/13/2020 arraignment. I don't know, but it's a motion to dismiss case charges with constitutional authorities. And briefly, this is it. Authority, the Constitution of the U.S. Amendment 6, specifically the right to a speedy trial, has been violated. The state of Florida has not met the requirements or proven good cause of delays. Ineffective, substandard state-provided attorneys should have made this request long ago, proving this as a fact. Okay. And then all it is it's the Bill of Rights 1 through 7 attached. But what's interesting, I don't know, who are those people? Ineffective, I'm not even sure. I think it should be ineffective, something like that. Anyhow, that's it. That is it. But I just thought I would share that with you. Very peculiar. But then so is Sarah Boone. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. I was looking through the records because I know there was, Sarah had said when she made the 911 call that she put her boyfriend in the suitcase. Now, I don't think she necessarily did that. They both been drinking. He may have gone in there willingly, thinking it was just going to be a game. But I was looking at some of their arrest records. They've both been arrested for DV. But look, Sarah is very small, and so is George. Sarah, according to the records, 5'3", 130 pounds. George was 5'4", 140 pounds. So we're only talking 1 inch difference. He was 1 inch taller and like 10 pounds heavier than her. So that's probably why he fit in the suitcase. But that's pretty interesting. Very small, both of them. So I've been talking about this for a while, but I haven't actually gone through with it. But now is a good time while we await this case that we've all been waiting for. But I know that, I don't know if it was a year ago, sometime back, but it's there on the playlist. There was an audio of Sarah's ex, Brian, being interviewed by the police, and it was very interesting because he revealed a lot of things about Sarah, her drinking, and all I can say is thank goodness that their son is with Brian. But this is the property manager. So let's take a listen to this, and hopefully you all can hear it.
Today's date is February 26, 2020. The time was approximately 12:05 hours. This is in reference to Orange County case number 20-. 017904. I'm currently located at Tealwood Park Apartments, 4704 Lucier. Fort Winter Park, Florida, 32792. I am here with my partner, Detective Scott Long with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. And can you state your name?
Melissa May Sexton.
You are the property manager of this complex, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we had come here
Excuse
asking
me.
about the tenants, Sarah Boone and George Torres. And they have lived here. You gave us a date of February 9th, 2018.
Correct.
Okay. You had told us that Sarah would confide in you about her and George's relationship. Can you tell us further what she would tell you?
Yes. Sarah, shortly after she moved in with George, she came to the office to talk to me. We noticed bruises and stuff on her, and she asked me if she could talk to me privately and asked how she would be able to get George off of the lease. Is there any way to do that? Which prompted, deeper conversation. She proceeded to let me know, and she was showing me a lot of bruises and marks. There were handprints, scratches. She even at one point had to go to the hospital. Through multiple conversations that we had it steadily progressed. She had a very large gash at one point in her shin. She had to go to the hospital and get that taken care of. I'm not exactly sure what it was from, but I think it had to do when they got into a fight outside. And something got broke. I think it was one of their wine glasses or something. But, she came to me at one point asking, what do I do? Like, how can I get rid of him? I haven't dealt with this type of situation. I just counseled her as she continued to come to me and explained to her that, she had to make a decision if she was going to stay with him or not be with him. If she, was going to try to work things out, they needed to seek out therapy, help, something. It wasn't too long after that last conversation that I found out the police had come and George was arrested. I don't remember about how long it was in between time, but there was another incident after that where they both got arrested, all for domestic. The complaints throughout their whole term, roughly about 20 to 30 noise complaints, fighting, arguing, banging on doors, loud music. It was just always something pertaining to their lifestyle. I do know that I have seen both of them intoxicated as early as 9 o'clock in the morning, and I mean staggering, falling down, intoxicated, both of them. There was a noise complaint that I had received about some fighting one day that was going on, and Sarah was actually wandering around the property very drunk, barefoot, not properly dressed, I'll say it like that, sitting on the side of her building over by the retention pond. When I was told about that is when I approached Sarah, sat down, talked to her. I even had also separately went and talked to George and told them that once they had sobered up, I needed to have a meeting with them. The following business day, because this was a Friday, I do remember that, I went to see them Monday, roughly about 12 o'clock. They were sober. They apparently had some epiphany, that they were going to straighten themselves up and start acting right. And they did very good for, basically until now. I haven't gotten any complaints since May of the past year, But up until that point, the complaints were consistent, monthly, always.
Would you ever speak with George by himself? Like, did he ever confide in you about their relationship?
The one time where, like I was just saying, that when I talked to her, she asked me to go talk to him. But she's like, please go put the fear of God in them. Fear of God in them. I'm a very stern property manager, I don't tolerate a lot of crap.
Right.
And she knew that, and she seemed scared of him at the time. So I said, sure, no problem, just stay here. We'll go talk to him. I went over, sat down, talked to George. I talked to him for about 30 minutes altogether. And, George had explained to me that she was actually the aggressive one. And the reason she ended up with marks is, in my perception of what he was trying to explain is that she's very hands-on, in the face, dramatized in talking and explaining because she was always drunk and she's very hands-on. There was one day, as a matter of fact, it was that same day that I talked to George by himself. She kept grabbing me by the arms to the point that I told her, I said, if you touch me one more time, we're going to have a problem. You know, I'm either going to contact the police or whatever we need to do, but you can't keep grabbing on me. I had asked her several times to quit touching me. And because of that, she would do the same thing to Jean, and Jean didn't like it.
Right.
So, you know, that's what he was explaining to me, is she was always the touchy one, the aggressive one, you know, not that she was hitting him, but she would be like in his face, or she might, you know, push him, or, you know, little things like that. And she would block him from coming out of the room or whatnot, and he would take her and move her. You know what I mean? And just, that's the way he had explained it to me.
Right.
She has told me, even literally to Monday, I have been told by her several occasions that he has drug her around by the hair of her head. I've been, you know, told about by neighbors. I'm sorry I don't have it anymore, but at one point a tenant actually sent us a video clip via text of them two fighting and beating on each other out in the backyard. There was another complaint incident about a ladder being propped up to the wall that George was using to climb over the wall to try to get back into his apartment so he could get in and out. There was another night, sorry, I forgot to tell you about this too. I got a call for one of my vacants in building 24, 4724, which is not their building. There was a tent set up on my vacant back porch. And it's apparently where George was sleeping for a couple of nights because she hadn't got out of the house. I have another tenant here who may or may not speak to you, I'm not sure. For that reason, I don't want to give you her name just yet without talking to her, but George and her fighting that the different evening had actually wandered into her home. He was so drunk and had no idea where he was, and when she came home, luckily her kids were not there because she's a single mother with 3 kids. George was actually upstairs in her house hollering, looking for Sarah, thinking he was in his apartment. So we've had some incidences with them in that aspect, but nothing has ever been so bad that, you know, I didn't feel that we could resolve the problem. And like I said, we haven't had any issues since May of last year. No complaints, no nothing until this. So we thought, hey, they're doing great. You know, maybe they fixed the problems. I mean,
Has she come to you since May of any issues?
No.
Okay.
Not one time.
But then again, you did. Basically, they were told you're going to be evicted if there are.
Yes.
So it's kind of like tighten up or get out.
Yeah, it was put up or shut up. I was over it.
Yeah.
If it continued, I was putting them out.
Right.
So,
Did you ever see any marks on George?
no. Not one. Not one. George was a little bit darker skinned.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Would you see George as often as you saw Sarah? It sounds like Sarah came to you a lot more.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would always see Sarah as far as the only time I ever really saw George is the time when we actually got George to sign off the lease.
Right.
And he came to me and said, you know, I can't get back in the house. She's got all my personal paperwork because would you please have a conversation with her so that I can get my personal paperwork back from her? He goes, but do you have a bolt cutter, set of bolt cutters for my bicycle that's out back? And I said, what's it chained to, you know? And he said, it's actually chained to your AC unit. I said, yeah, no problem. I'll cut the lock. I'll cut the lock for anything attached to my AC unit. It's not supposed to be attached to that.
Right.
So I went out back and actually cut the lock on both of the bike locks because Sarah would not answer the door for me because she knew George was there. Once George was gone, she had actually, because Sarah had my cell phone number, being that I had already went through and just got out of a very abusive relationship, Sarah knew that because, you know, I confided in her and explained that. She did feel a lot more comfortable in coming to me. So I told her if she ever needed someone, you know, or it was an emergency, she could reach out to me and I would do what I could to help her. I felt bad for her.
Big mistake.
But after a while, when she just kept taking him back, I just told her, I said, you know, you're just going to have to call the authorities on your own. It's obvious you don't want it to stop. You know, he's not doing anything to get help according to you. Can you just keep dealing with it? I mean, you know, there comes a point where it's just stupidity. You know, but that's the run-ins and incidences that I've had with him. I've never seen a mark on George, and he's never told me that she's hit her at all.
Okay.
But she has told me in front of him that he has hit her and things that he's done, and he was not denying it. He never denied it. George and her both expressed to me on many occasions that they knew they needed help. You know, but I'm guessing due to their financial situation, not having any work, probably why they didn't do much.
Right.
You know.
When you saw them together, who looked to be like more dominant? I mean, did one seem to be more dominant over the other?
George. George was very confident. You know, he wasn't arrogant or anything. He, for the most part, stayed to himself. Like I said, there are a couple people here that he knew. You know, from, I would say, another life from Philadelphia. And, you know, George was the one I always seen driving the vehicle. George is the one I always seen playing with the child. You know, never saw Sarah outside playing with her kid, ever. As a matter of fact, most of the time, Lucas, you would find him riding around the property on his bike, unattended. No parents outside, no nothing. Because I had actually had a conversation with Sarah about that. And I said, you know, the kid was a great kid, don't get me wrong, he never did anything to get me in trouble, but it was more my concern for his well-being. You know, when he's all the way riding over here, and around some of these corners with the dumpsters, these people don't see nobody, and they sure ain't gonna see no kid. So I had a conversation with her about that, and we haven't had any really problems. I can say I've only seen Lucas on his bike away from her like that twice. She actually had secluded him to stay in front of the building, you know, which was fine. I just didn't want to live here. But yeah, you didn't see Sarah. The only time I ever saw her, especially after the incident took place with him and his ex-girlfriend, it was more like a confrontation that took place in the office. She made an accusation on Emmett saying that he was trying to forcefully, like, I don't want to say rape, but he was trying to push himself on her.
On Sarah?
On Sarah. She made that claim.
Some tenant, a different tenant.
Another tenant that knew George from Philly. And they confronted the two of them. You know, I will say Sarah held her ground when the girl confronted her and asked her and said, you know, don't lie to my face. And Sarah said, yeah, he did. You know, so I was surprised because she knew that girl was but she's larger than me. So, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well maybe there's some truth to that. But it ended up, you know, just fizzling out. It was no big deal. After that situation took place, you really had to see Sarah too much. She was pretty intimidated. Those two folks are actually a pretty large family that I have living here on site that actually took up 4 units at that time. So the whole family lives here. You know, it's a little intimidating. So after that, we really didn't see a whole lot.
But before that, they would hang out periodically. So.
The other two families, no, they just knew each other from
The
back
couple.
in the day.
Oh, the couple did?
The kids did.
The kids?
Yes,
did that.
that's what initially prompted it, and then that accusation was made during that same time.
Okay.
So, and when it comes to the kids on my property, I stay very involved with them. We have some issues with our bus routes and all kinds of stuff, and we had some kid vandalism being done, broken glass bottles. They were pulling glass bottles out of trash, breaking them, thought it was fun. And one kid told on another, and the parents got involved. It became a little bit of an issue, so I had to get in the middle to squash it, you know. I didn't want anybody fighting on the property or kids getting hurt for that matter. But that's it.
Is there anything else that you think is important for us to know about Sarah or George that we haven't discussed?
I mean, no, I don't. Nothing really. Her nickname's Grumpy the Bear. I mean, you know, literally. We know they drink from sunup to sundown.
Would she ever, I know she confided in you a lot, would she ever admit that she was an alcoholic to you? She would.
Yes. I wish I still had my text messages. She sent it to me on text many occasions. I know we drink too much and that. She told me that George one time had enrolled in AA and was getting help. Now, brother, that was any truth. I have no idea. A lot of stuff like that I just take with a grain of salt. You know, I think she was more concerned about the image that was being put in my head for them, and I think she was just trying to paint a prettier picture.
Right.
Because I will say, it was like a week later, she was. And when we go, you know, inspecting the property and walking around different projects, we do a lot of pressure washing throughout the year. We do that a couple of times. You know, I ride around the back sides of the buildings, checking everything out. We've got a property water drainage system back there. You always knew, because you'd right back there and you'd hear 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, they're drunk falling down. My God, I can't imagine being drunk like that all the time. Jesus.
Okay. Can you raise your right hand for me?
Yes.
Promise and swear everything we've talked about has been true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Exams are recording 12 to 20 hours.
Well, interesting. Oh my goodness, they sound like they were a mess. I mean, like I said, I know that George was no angel, but then it is interesting to hear how hands-on, air quotes, she was, very handsy. And I know I've seen some footage that people have gotten of her. I think it was George getting arrested, and I think she was pretty intoxicated and very touchy-feely, and oh my gosh. But can you imagine him being on a tent? I do know that the one that I will I will share the audio of the neighbor. And I think Sarah ended up on his patio sleeping. So, and then George had a tent. And can you just imagine living next to them? Oh my goodness. That would be... So I just wonder if hearing that perhaps he could have been, I guess, the aggressor too, if that will help her. But you know, at the end of the day, Sarah's alive, George isn't. And we had that god-awful recording that she did of him in the suitcase, which is just horrifying. So, yeah, this is going to be one for the books, I'm sure. So I wanted to share this brief clip with you that, if y'all haven't seen it, you might find it interesting. About a year ago, I think it was released on News Nation. And what it's talking about is that, I guess it was about a year and a half after the unaliving of George and where they lived, a couple moved in, a young couple, and I guess it had been vacant for a while, and the neighbors were kind of like, oh boy, you're really brave to move in there. And see, they did not know about what Sarah did to George at the time. So they were kind of like, wow, okay. And so now I guess they've been following the case, and they let somebody in, and they were very nice and all that. But so let's just play that real quick.
I am almost certain that when they moved in, they were ecstatic, right? It's their new condo, it's their new place. There's nothing like moving into a new place, fresh start, get to put your stuff wherever you want, rejig stuff. And that was probably how this nice young couple felt when they moved into their place in Winter Park, Florida. And then it was like really weird because the neighbors were giving them strange looks. But whatever, right? Okay, we're new in town. Maybe that was why. Who knows? Till eventually one of the neighbors said, you're really brave moving in there. To which they responded, what do you mean? And that's when they learned the truth about their really hot new place that they just moved into. It was a murder scene. Yeah, it was a murder scene. It was the place where police say Sarah Boone zipped her boyfriend, George, right there into that suitcase in the corner of the room, and then laughed and taunted him and videotaped it as he slowly had the life snuffed out of him. Suffocated, died in that suitcase. Tonight, for the first time, I'm going to take you inside that home because those new tenants have been kind enough to invite us in and show us where, in fact, this happened, because it was news to them that that's where they were living, and that's where they are living. Not only that, but we have something else that's exclusive and new for you. That's Alex Capriello on your screen right there, walking into that murder scene. But the first person that Sarah Boone called when she awoke from her drunk stupor, and this is her story, not mine, as police told us, first person she called when she came downstairs from the drunk night and realized that Jorge was, dead in the suitcase, was not 911. It was her ex-husband. And so tonight, for the first time, he's talking to us. And we have some exclusive reporting on what that ex-husband said about the conversation, and said about Sarah, and said about the child that they have together. I want to bring in that intrepid reporter, News Nation correspondent Alex Capriello. He is live from outside of that crime scene tonight. Man, oh man, you get the goods. I just saw you knocking on that door. They invited you in. You have exclusive first-time access to this murder scene. So just start there. Start with the walking me through the scene that you walked into, and tell me what they told you.
Yeah, it was a bit surreal, right? Coming to this exact spot, knowing what happened here. We've seen the videos on TikTok and obviously on News Nation as we've covered this story, but actually being here and walking through that door was a completely different experience. The Garcia family actually lives here right now. They moved in September 2021, about a year and a half after Sarah Boone was arrested. This apartment stayed vacant all that entire time, and it wasn't until after they moved in when all of a sudden neighbors started approaching them saying, hey, do you know what happened here? And he joked to me. He said, what, did somebody die? Actually, yes, that's exactly what happened. So I got a chance to go inside this apartment, look at it myself, compare it to the videos that we've been seeing online, that infamous now cell phone video that police have that shows George Torres suffocating inside of that suitcase while his girlfriend, Sarah Boone, was just taunting him, laughing. And actually seeing it firsthand, Ashley, is completely different. But kudos to the Garcia family. They're really braving it out. They are following this trial very closely now. They've been watching all the videos on TikTok. They're watching News Nation right now as we speak and all this coverage, because now they are way closer to this case than they probably ever would have imagined.
I can imagine what it would have been like, and it's very kind of the Garcias to let us take a look. As you know, a crime reporting show, it's very important to try to get as close to the story as possible. So much appreciated. I want to just
Okay, so yeah, I think they're gonna replay the video of George begging to be let out, and I just really, but I got to get a different expression on their faces.
run some of this.
There we go, better. Okay, that's good enough. Okay, so I thought that was interesting. Can you imagine going in there and thinking and not knowing, and people acting weird, and then finding out what happened? You think that people would have to divulge that information, but maybe not. But it definitely, looking at it, definitely has a better feel, doesn't it? You know, seeing the cheerful balloons, and I don't know, it just it seems much more harmonious than, well, obviously, but I mean, them just, going around being drunk and embarrassing and foolish, and oh my goodness, and Sarah being all handsy. It is crazy stuff. But I'll bet the neighbors now appreciate the Garcias much more than they do Sarah and poor George. But so what do y'all think about that? Hearing what the property manager had to say. It was interesting to note that it was George out there spending time and playing with Sarah's son Lucas. I just don't feel like you don't really hear her say anything about Lucas, because I think it's, let's face it, being what I presume is a narcissist like herself, she doesn't have time to think about anyone but her. You know, you don't hear her saying anything about her son. Well, except that one where I read the letter about her being mad because her son kind of disrespected her. But like I said, I'm not one to promote disrespecting your parents, but I kind of get where he was coming from. I mean, it doesn't sound like she was a very good mother, let's face it. And thank goodness for Brian. But that's it for now. I will get some of the other audios out in the next day or two, hopefully. And that's going to be a wrap. I have to tell you, I am really beat. Almost finishing my 3rd week of school. This has definitely been a challenge. We have we're kindergarten, but it is ESE. But we teach general education. But the kids we have this year, their minds are probably like 10-month-olds, and we have 8 of them, which doesn't sound big, but when you're changing diapers and they're running around like toddlers, because that's, the age of their mind, it is, every joint in my body is like, whoa. So I'm just glad I was able to get this much out, because I'm ready to call it a night. But I hope that you all found this interesting, and tell me what you think about what the property manager said, and how do you think it's going to go for Sarah? Okay, well, you know what I'm going to say. As always, I love you all. I appreciate you. Please like and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, I truly do appreciate you all. Be kind to someone, be kind to you, and I'll see you the next time.